One of the places most deeply impacted by the massacres of the October 7th attack was the Nova Music Festival, not far from the border of Gaza. It's deeply disturbing that just 21 months later, at the Glastonbury Music Festival in England, the message being promoted, celebrated on stage, is the message of the October 7 massacre. A message which is pro-Hamas, anti-IDF, to a crowd that is no different to the crowd that was dancing that October 7th at the Nova Music Festival. Listen to how Douglas Murray understands the implications of this dreadful celebration that took place just the other day in Glastonbury. Here we have to say here.
Now let's go to the UK. We've had the orgy of hate at Glastonbury Music Festival. Pascal Robinson Foster, I've got to say, I'd never heard of him until this week. That's the name of the dude who started the Death to IDF chant and other chants on stage, enthusiastically backed by the crowd. We saw plenty more political statements, all in the one direction. Douglas, how do we begin to understand these young, privileged people at a music festival really having no empathy for people very similar to them who were slaughtered at the Nova Music Festival less than 2 years ago?
It's astonishing, isn't it? The sort of instinct one has on it in a way is, to wish that these morons at Glastonbury ever got a glimpse of what the innocent young people at the Nova Festival saw on the morning of October the 7th. The fact that not much more than a year and a half after the massacre of hundreds of young people at the Nova Festival, another music festival, Glastonbury, would keep on having artists coming out in favor of the people who did the attacks and not on the side of the victims. It's not like it should be a hard one, that. Are you on the side of the big bearded rapists and torturers and murderers and kidnappers? Or are you on the side of the innocent young people dancing in the early hours of the morning at the Nova Festival? These people have decided they're on the side of the rapists and the torturers and the killers and the kidnappers. And it's so despicable. But there's something that needs to be brought out about this, which is there's quite rightly been a lot of rage about this idiot dolt saying death to the IDF, which of course means death to all the young men and women who have mandatory service in Israel and have to risk their lives fighting terrorists up close. But there's been a lot of reaction to that. But there's something else that this moron chanted on stage that's also worth lingering on. I write about this in my Spectator column this coming week, which is he led the crowd in these chants of that you say you want your country back, F that.
Yes.
And all the time with projections on the back of the stage about the fact that immigrants built Britain and much more. This is almost perfectly created to be as divisive and hate-filled a message as possible. He was saying to white British people, you're not going to get your country back. People like me are taking your country. He used terms like gammon, a totally racist term that is used with such ease by these people. And he was just saying, no, actually, we're here. I'm here. You don't have your country anymore. And of course, the amazing irony of him doing this in front of a crowd, merrily waving Palestinian flags. So they pretend to care about indigenous rights, don't care about indigenous Jews, and actually hate indigenous British people, hate white indigenous British people. This is out and out racism against the British public. And I mean, it makes you despair at the fact that all of these people would pay and chant along to hate all the time, thinking they're acting, of course, in the name of love. And the organizers and everyone else should be ashamed of themselves. I very much look forward to the day when we never have to consider Glastonbury again.
I'm so glad you're writing about that. We talked about that on the program, that entire song and chant, and to hear the crowd sing along enthusiastically, these self-loathing, privileged almost uniformly white kids. It's almost like a comedy sketch, only it's tragic.
It would make no sense why these people dancing with freedom, with joy, with abandon, would not be able to identify with the Jewish people who were celebrating that morning at the Nova Festival. There is no rational explanation except for saying that this is, like Douglas Murray says, shameless racism. Those who stand for freedom and democracy are essentially standing for racism, where they are calling for the death of the Jewish people. By saying death to the IDF, they're saying that the IDF should disappear. And what's going to happen when the Jewish people put down their weapons? October 7th will happen over and over and over again, God forbid, and there will be no more Jewish people. This chant is essentially a call for racism, and it's so tragic, it's so painful to see. The paradox within the anti-Israel movement is very difficult to process. It's difficult to understand. It only makes sense when you understand it in the context of hate, of racism. Now, just the other day, I was actually in Athens in Greece, where an elderly Greek person came over to me, and noticing how Jewish I look, he began to cross himself multiple times over and over. And after which, he began to mutter under his breath, berating me for being a Zionist, for being a murderer, for genocide, for IDF, for colonizing, for being an occupier. Now, I chose not to engage, but I was so tempted to respond to this person by saying, you know that God is a Zionist too. God is the one who invented the word Zionist. It's in the Bible, and you just crossed yourself because you believe apparently in God and you believe in the Bible, and therefore you should be able to believe in Zionism as well. If you believe in God, then you believe that God gave the land of Israel to the people of Israel. That is one of the most important foundational principles and recurring theme throughout the entire book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Yet the paradox just didn't make any difference to this person. It made absolutely no difference. And by the way, there's another paradox at play. You know, the Greeks were the ultimate colonizers. These were people that invaded other countries. These were people that forced their culture, their language, their heritage, their tradition upon other people. We, the Jewish people, have an entire holiday dedicated to the freedom of the Jewish people from the Greek occupation. It's the festival of Hanukkah. 2,200 years ago, we're celebrating the time when the Greeks invaded the promised land and we were able to successfully drive them out against all odds. Yet it's the Greeks that are telling me, an American Jew, that we are colonizers, we are occupiers, we are invaders. This makes absolutely no sense. The entire movement, the anti-Israel movement, is not anything in support of the Palestinians. They don't care when Palestinians get killed. When Palestinians get killed, when Arabs get killed by other Arabs, there's no protest. You don't hear any protest. You know, when a church was attacked in Syria the other day, you don't hear a word. There's no United Nations meetings. There's no protest. It's not about protecting the Arabs. It's about attacking the Jews. And that is an act of racism, which needs to be called out. We need to call a spade a spade. Attacking Jews in Melbourne, Australia, attacking Jews all over the world because of Israel is an act of racism. And those who believe that they're standing up against genocide are the ones who are calling for genocide. The call from the river to the sea, the call of death to the IDF, is essentially a call to genocide, where the finger that is pointing at us is essentially pointing three fingers at itself. It's time for us to find our values, to discover who we are and where we're going, because as long as we have values where we recognize the sovereignty of God Almighty, where we recognize how every single person is created in the image of God Almighty, and how every single person has the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that no one deserves to be killed. Murder is okay when it's in self-defense, but killing for no reason is not okay ever. It's when we have those values that we can pursue peace and we can aspire to a life of equality for all. But when we have no values, when we don't believe in God, when we don't believe in the Bible, when we don't believe in every person being created in the image of God, then tragically we cascade, they avalanche into the very thing that they're supposedly fighting against. They're becoming racist. They already are racists. May God Almighty infuse us all with awareness, with consciousness, and may we all be able to experience mutual respect and dignity for all human beings.